Sorry. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. So yeah. So in the last class, we discussed a way to hash efficiently using the minimum amount of space for the static dictionary problem. Right? We saw what is known as the FKS hashing scheme. Right? So we'll see another hashing scheme right now. It combines. So we have mostly. So if you look at, if you recall the balls and bins paradigms, it was basically the idea was that you're going to use a random hash function, and then you're going to use, say, chaining for the elements that map into the same entry of the table, and then we bounded the number of elements that can occur in the same bin, and using that we bounded the complexity for searching an element using chaining, right? And so first we will see that this idea of balls and bins, but with a slight modification, can give a lot of improvement regarding with regard to the number of balls in a bin, right? So this is the idea of what is known as hashing with two choices. Right. So the idea is that now, say you have n items, n balls to be put in n bins, right? Now you use the following technique. What you do is, for each ball, choose two bins at random, right? And place the ball in the bin with the smallest load, right? So you have instead of choosing a bin at random and then just placing the ball in the bin, you choose two bins at random, and then you place the ball in the bin with the smallest load, right? You find out which one has a smaller number of balls in it, and you put the ball in that corresponding bin. So now it turns out that once you do this, then the following happens. So with high probability, right, the maximum load in any bin is order log n, right? So recall that this quantity, right, this was order log n for normal hashing, right? So it's a sort of exponential improvement over normal hashing. So if you do this very simple way trick of just, instead of placing a ball in the bin, you choose two bins at random and then place the ball depending on which bin has smaller number of balls, right? So then there is an exponential improvement in the number of the maximum load in the bins, right? And the way it depends. So instead of, you could try to generalize this, you could try to say that you choose say d bins at random, and place the ball in the bin with the smallest load, right? So you could do this as well, right? Instead of 2 y stop at 2, let's take some d. And what the way d depends on this load is that with high probability, the max load is order log n by log d, right? That is a dependence. So the dependence on d is something like log d, right? So this is sometimes known as this power of two choices, right? So you're making two choices instead of one, and suddenly the performance of the hash function improves, right? So log is, for most practical cases, log is like really small, right? So even if you have a very large number of balls and so on, right, log n would mean that it's almost constant for most practical cases, right? So this is uh, this is very surprising in some sense, right? We have just modified a little bit, and we are doing some sort of a greedy placement by choosing two bins at random, right? So so there's some question. Yeah, so there are constants involved and so on, right? I mean, these are order notation. There are constants involved. It's not equal to log n by log t or something, right? Yeah. Is that what you're asking? Right. I don't know exactly what the constants involved are. So it can change a little bit. Yeah. Right. And so there might be other terms as well there, right? So let's say d is some constant for now, right? Not for arbitrary n, right? So then if you're taking arbitrary n, then I don't know what does it mean to say that you're choosing. I mean, the analysis doesn't matter, right? I mean, if you're choosing n balls, then there's no randomness there. You're just finding the lowest ball and then you're placing it. I mean, I don't understand, isn't it? All right. So, the analysis, right? The analysis is fairly technical for this. We will not do the analysis mainly because the technique that is involved in proving the statement we will probably not see again in the course. So we will probably not spend time trying to analyze this for now, right? So it is there in the book. I can give the reference. You can go over the reference, but we will not do the analysis. It is some sort of an induction, but there are a lot of technicalities involved, right? But what we will look at is a slight variation of this idea of two choices. What we will do is we will look at a hashing scheme where we use the two choices, but then we will combine that with, instead of chaining, we will do some kind of an open addressing, right? So we will look at a scheme which is basically, again, hashing with two choices and some form of open addressing, right? So what, if you recall, open addressing means that you're storing elements in a hash table, but then you are not, when there is a collision, then you're not storing it in a linked list like in a chain, but rather you find another position within the table to store it, right? And this technique of this hashing, it's what is known as called cuckoo hashing. Okay. So this is a technique that was developed. The paper came out sometime in 2001, right? So this is going to combine the idea of two choices, right? For each element, we look at two possible choices, and we'll also do the following: that if there is already an element in the bin that you're going to place this element that you're inserting, instead of putting it in a chain, you will start moving elements within the table, right? So that you're always inserting elements into the table, right? So that your searching is always going to be constant time, but then your insertions can take more than constant time, right? Your insertions can be slightly costly. Your search is always going to be constant in the worst case, right? What we'll see is that the technique is such that the insertion is also going to be constant in expectation, and searching is going to be constant in the worst case, right? So this is a data structure that is going to give search in order one constant worst case, right? And insertion in order one expected. So recall, I mean, both these are high probability bounds, right? I mean, it's not that it's a deterministic algorithm, but both of them happen with high probability. Okay. So we will see this idea of cuckoo hashing that is going to combine the notion of two choices with some form of open addressing. Okay, so that's what we will see next. Correct. Any questions so far? All right. So what is the idea of cuckoo hashing? Right? So now what you do is the following. Okay, so you have say m. Let me just fix the notation for once. Let's see. Right. So you have n. You have a hash table with n positions. Right. And you're going to you have m elements, right, to be inserted. Okay. So now what you do is you choose two hash functions, h1 and h2, right? For our analysis and discussion, we will assume that these are truly random functions. Right? These are just random functions. These are the two hash functions, right? What is this? And now what you do, your insertion is as follows, right? For an element x, right, you check if h1x or h2x, right? The table in the t of h1x and t of h2x. This is the table. This is the hash table t, right? You check if one of these is empty, and if so, place x in t of h1 of x or t of h2 of x, whichever is empty. Doesn't matter. Okay. Otherwise, what happens? Otherwise, which means that both there is a y which is in say h1x and z. There is a y sitting in the h1 of x entry, right? There's a y in t of h1 of x, and there is a say a z in t of h2 of x. Now, what you do is you choose one of these elements, right? And you move y to t h1 of y or t h2 of y, whichever is empty. Okay. And you keep doing this until you find you keep doing this, right? Iteratively. Right. So for instance, you try to place y in th1y or th2y and you realize that both of them are full. You take one of those elements, replace that with y, and see where that element can be mapped to, right? You look at its corresponding the other location, right? So for instance, maybe I should just explain this a little better, right? So the reason that y was in t of h1 of x, right? This is because h1 of y or h2 of y was actually equal to h1 of x, right? That's the reason, right? One of these two must be equal. That is why it was placed there in the first place. So then what you do, so suppose this happens and say h2 of y is equal to h1 of x, okay? Say this happens, right? Then what you do is you move y to t of h1 of y. And if there is some element sitting in there, you move it to the corresponding that element to its corresponding position given by the hash function for that element. Right? You keep doing this iteratively until you can find a empty spot and you enter it there. And the question is, there are two things. One is how long will this run? Right? How long will this run? And secondly, what if we don't find an empty spot? Right? To describe the process completely. So this is part of the analysis. This is something that we will see. But what happens if you don't find an empty slot? Right? So what you can do at this point is that you take all these elements and then rehash them completely into a new table. Right? You choose two new functions h1 and h2, and then you rehash the entire thing into a new table. Right? This point, what you will do is you will just rehash the table into a new hash table with different h1 and h2. Right? Right. So typically, what you will do is you will not wait until you find an empty slot. If you have a long enough chain, right? What you will do is if you find that the chain is going for too long, you will stop and rehash it directly. Right? You don't wait to realize that there is an empty slot, because you don't know when there isn't going to be an empty slot. Right? I mean, you might just keep going along in loops or something. You don't know what will happen. So what you do is you just run for sufficiently long time, and if you don't find a place to stop, you just stop this iteration and you rehash all the elements into a new table. Right? So is the process clear? Is the idea, is the data structure, the insertion algorithm clear? Any questions on that? Right, the name comes from this process, right? So the cuckoo is supposed to be a bird which goes and lays its egg in another bird's nest and then throws out the eggs that are there, right? So that is typically how the bird cuckoo is portrayed, right? So this is that, and this seems to be doing something like that. You go and try to place an element into one of the bins. If it is full, you just throw whatever is in there and ask it to go and find a different bin, right? And you keep doing this. That is how the name cuckoo hashing comes. Right? That's why it's called cuckoo hashing. Right? Any questions regarding this hashing strategy? Okay. So the first thing to observe is that this is indeed constant time, right? So this the first observation, which is not very hard to make, is that searching takes order one time in the worst case. Right? Because all you have to do is just check if x is present in t of h1 of x or t of h2 of x, because that's the only two places where x can be placed. So if it is not there in both these positions, then definitely x is not present in the table. Right? So searching is very fast. It's order one time. It's deterministic in the sense that you will never make an error. If x is present, you will always find it. If x is not present, you will say it is not present. So that is simple enough. It's because you don't you only move elements to a place given by one of the two hash functions. You don't just move it arbitrarily, right? So there is no long chain for every element. There is a long chain only when you're inserting, but not for checking for an element. So searching takes order one time. Yeah. In step 2, do we also increase the size of the hash table? Is it a possible idea? Which step 2 in the sense? You mean the two questions that I've asked? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So it is. I guess it is possible. So you are increasing the. Sure, you can increase. You are going to increase the hash table size. We will see. Right. We will see how much size the hash table should have with respect to the number of elements that you're putting in before all these guarantees hold. So you are going to increase the size of the hash table. But then to get the guarantees, we'll need new randomness. You need new hash functions. You will probably not. It will not probably work with the same set of hash functions. You will need some new hash function. Yeah? So you will increase the hash table size. Yeah. And we'll need the hash table to be, say, at least something like almost twice the number of elements that are going to be inserted. Otherwise, you don't have any of these guarantees. That's what we will see also. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So then let's try to understand, let's try to see how to analyze this, um, the cuckoo hashing, right? So one way to look at this hashing process is to, we look at the hash table and study a corresponding graph, what is known as the cuckoo graph. We call it the cuckoo graph, right, of the hash table, right? So how do you get, so you say you have a hash table, right? There are n entries in this hash table. Okay. So the graph that you have is a graph with n vertices. Okay. And if you have m entries, right, m elements that are going to be hashed, then this graph is going to have m edges. Okay. The only point to note is that there could be parallel edges, which means that there are edges between multiple edges between two vertices, and also there could be self loops. Okay. And how do you construct this graph? So let's let's look at this table, which is 1 2 up till n. So your graph has n vertices, right? 1 2 3 and so on till n, right? And you place an edge. Okay. So for every m, you place an edge between say, so say this is the element I. Okay, this is the edge corresponding to element I. So you put an edge between 1 and n if the set h1i h2i, right, if this set is equal to 1 comma n, right? So for instance, for every I comma j in 1 to n, if say if k in 1 to m is such that h1k h2k is a set ij, then ij is an edge in the cuckoo graph. Correct. So what does self loops mean? What do self loops mean in this graph? Yeah, h1k is equal to h2k, right? They both map to the same index. So there is you have h1k is equal to h2k, right? And when do you have parallel edges? When two elements are mapped to the same set of indices, right? So you have k1 and k2 such that h1 k1 h2 k2, right? The set is same as sorry, h2 k1, right? The same as h1 k2 h2 k2. right? In which case you'll have parallel edges, right? So this is a graph, right? And that is obtained from the hash functions and this hash table, right? So this graph, so we're going to study properties of this graph, right? And what can you say, right? When can you uh, when is it that you are able to add an element into this hash table? When is it and how long will it take? We are going to understand based on the structure of this graph. Okay, so any questions so far regarding the cuckoo graph? Okay, so here is one observation that you can say, right? So now if you have given this graph, so you have a graph G and uh, you have its connected components, right? So you are given the graph G. This is the cuckoo graph, right? Now for an element, right? Sorry. Right. So for an element I, for an element X that you want to enter, that you want to enter into the hash table, right? What you're interested in actually is the connected component of G containing the vertices h1x and h2x, right? Why? Because this connected components is telling you, so for instance, when you have an edge, right? So when you have an edge of this form, right, and say there is an element that is getting mapped here, the edge tells you where this element can be moved, right? So if you're going to enter enter an element X into the hash table, what we are actually interested in is in the connected component containing these this h1x and h2x, because that's where you're going to spend time trying to find out where you can enter, right? So in some sense, what you want to say is that you want to say somehow bound the size of connected components in the cuckoo graph. Right? If you can bound the size of the connected components in the cuckoo graph, then it tells you how long will you take to actually uh, insert an element into the table, right? So you want to find out what is the worst case. Say we'll bound what is the worst case as well as the expected size, right? Okay. So let's look at some cases where you can actually enter an element into this table and when you cannot. Right? So now, suppose that let's look at the first case. Right? Suppose that um, the connected component that a connected component is a tree. What can you say about entering putting an element X in that in that connected component? Right. Say let's say you have a tree. Right. What can you say? After you enter, after you input X, what can you say? Will you be able to actually enter? So what will you do in this case? So rehashing, let's forget about rehashing for now, right? Because um, okay, so you're saying that in the sense you're saying we won't rehash because you will be able to find a place to put it. That's what you mean. Okay. So how will you find a place to put it? Right, we'll find a path to a leaf from the vertex x. So yeah, so what you can do is the following, right? So say that you have a tree. What you want to do is that you can basically say you have a tree, right? So what you want to do is that you want to know whether you want, so these are the bins, right? So these red things are the, these are the entries in the table, right? And the edges are actually are the keys or the entries in the let me, the red positions, right? The red things are the positions in the table, and the edges are the elements being inserted, correct? So as long as the number of elements being inserted is less than the number of positions open, then you will always be able to insert it, right? So here what you have, so if you have a tree with k vertices, right? It has k minus 1 edges, which means that you, this is a component where you're only going to insert k minus 1 elements, and there are k open positions, so you'll be able to enter elements into it, right? So this is fine. Uh, what if the other case that can happen is so the connected component contains a single cycle, right? So you could have something like this, say what can you do now? So we can still add. So let's what so let's, to understand this, so say you have this situation, okay? And let's say that some of these entries are full, okay? So there are some, so there are some elements sitting in here, say there are some elements sitting in here, some element here, and so on, right? So to understand, to see how to place elements into the hash table, we'll do the following, okay? So you recall that this cuckoo graph is an undirected graph, okay? So I can give a direction to the edges as follows, okay? So suppose there is an element sitting in here, okay? And suppose that so this edge, it means that this the element corresponding to this edge, okay, is can occur in one of these two places, correct? Now if so say this is edge E, so this is edge, oh, sorry, this is edge E, and okay, I'll name it with respect to the element, okay? So let's say this corresponds to the element X, okay? If X is sitting in here, what I do is I can direct this arrow outside. What this means is that X is already sitting in here. This is the next possible location for X, right? So what this is basically telling you is that if you had to move elements, if you had to place some element in here, then you should move x towards this element point here. Okay, so let's just see what can happen, right? Let's see what let's see some example runs of how this will work out, right? Let's look at this graph, okay, in detail. So suppose you have the following example. Okay, so you have these edges, these vertices. Okay, and say that you have such edges. Okay, so what does this mean? So this means that this entry in the table contains an element, and its possible second location is here, right? Similarly, this entry contains an element, and its possible next location is here, right? Similarly, this one contains an element, and its possible second location is here. Similarly, this one contains an element, and its next location is here, right? And similarly, this one contains an element, and its next location is here, right? And here, this contains an element, and its next location is here. Okay, is this figure clear? So now let's see what happens if you're trying to enter an element into this uh, table, right? So say this element corresponds to the edge that is here. Okay, so this is the element that you're going to enter. Call this element x. Okay. So now what you know is that, so this is the case one that we saw, right? This is the case one that we saw, right? Where you're entering an element into the hash table, and that is going to create some kind of it's going to create a tree, right? So how do you do? So what happens to this graph now? How do you enter? So let's say x chooses to go here. Okay. Then what do you do? The next step. Then what you have to do is this element here has to be moved to the entry here, right? And you will redraw this graph with an edge coming back like this, right? So maybe I'll use, you will redraw this edge by putting an edge this way now. Correct. And then what happens? Then you have the entry that is sitting in here, right? Its possible second location is here. So what you do is you just move this entry here, which means that this is now full, right? And then you say that its possible second location is somewhere here. Sorry. And this way we have now input x into the table, right? So this arrow will now be directed out of here like this, right? Because x is sitting in here and its possible second location is here. So this is one way in which this algorithm will run and find a location, right? Is this clear? Is the way the hashing works is clear? Is that clear? So let's look at the other case, right? Let's look at the case when the component can contain a single cycle. Okay. So before we get to that, what happens if you have two cycles? What happens when the connected component has two cycles? Right. So for instance, say you had something like this, okay, and here also you had something like this, okay, and say there were some elements already present, right? So this is created because these so you have these cycles because these elements are already present, and say there is some orientation for these edges. Okay, so let's say this is the orientation. So there is an element here, and that is oriented. This, say you have orientation this way. What does this mean? It means that the positions for this element are, let me name it 1, 2, 3, and 4. The positions for this element here in 1 is 1 and 4. The positions for the element in 2 is 2 and 1. The positions for the element in 4 is 4 and 3, and so on. Right? Similarly, you have, say, similarly, you have, say, something like this as well. Right? So now, say you have a new entry that is coming in here. Will you be able to add something, add this element into the table? What happens if you try to add this element x? Okay, so let's say it goes and chooses this uh, vertex first, right? So it has two possibilities. Let's say it goes here. Then what happens is x is placed here, and this element is pushed onto this vertex here. In which case, this element is now pushed onto this vertex here. In which case, this element is pushed back onto this vertex here. And then x gets pushed onto this cycle here, and you try to push it on this vertex. But now the element here gets pushed onto the vertex 1. 1 gets pushed onto 4. 4 gets pushed onto 3. 3 gets pushed back onto 2, where x was sitting, and then x gets pushed back to the vertex, say 5 here. So now what happens is you're just cycling across these points, trying to figure out where to place this, right? And this will just go on. There is no end to this, right? If you try to place the element x into the hash table when the cuckoo graph looks like this, you will just keep on cycling over all the possibilities without actually ending up anywhere, right? So if you have the connected component has two cycles, then you will not be able to input any element. You will not be able to input that particular element into the hash table, right? This is something that we want to avoid. Right? What we want to say is that such a thing cannot happen also, right? So what you want to say is that you can the connected component size, which measures the time that you spend inserting, is small, as well as you're unlikely to have two cycles if you're going to use cuckoo hashing with truly random hash functions, provided the size of the table is large enough, right? Is this clear? Is this example clear? Any questions so far? Okay, so it's possible that in this example, if you see, x was getting moved around, shuffled around more than once, right? So it is possible that x can get shuffled more than once, or some element can get shuffled more than once even when you are able to insert it. So it's not just that if you see one cycle you can stop it, right? It is possible that the each bin can be visited more than once when you're actually inserting. So we'll see one example for that. Okay, so say you have the following scenario. Okay, so you have the following scenario where you have the entries are sitting like this. And you have okay, so I hope this figure is clear, right? So what it means is that you have an element here whose second choice is here on in this vertex. So let me just name this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? So 1 has the next choice is 2. There is an element in 2 whose second choice is 3. There is an element in 3 whose second choice is 4. There is an element in 4 whose second choice is 6. There is an element in 6 whose second choice is 5. There is an element in 5 whose second choice is 3. There is an element in 7 whose second choice is 5. Right? Similarly, there is an element in 8 whose second choice is 9. So now suppose that you're going to enter an element here. Okay, this is the element that you're going to enter. Is this figure clear? Any questions? Okay. So what happens when you enter X? Right. Let's suppose that X first goes to say this 7 here. Right. Then what happens? So then what you do is you move the element in 7 to 5. Right. You move the element that is there in 7 to 5. Then what you have is you move the element in 7 to 5 and you put this edge, right? You put this edge back now because the other location for that element should have been 7, so you put this edge back in. Whatever was there in 5, you push to 3, right? Which means that its second position here, you reverse this edge, the edge of the cycle. Whatever was in 3, you push to 4, and this edge gets reversed, right? Whatever was in 4, it gets pushed to 6, and then you reverse this edge. Whatever was there in 6 gets pushed to 5, and you reverse the edge this way, right? But now what you do, you have whatever was there in 5 gets pushed back, right? This gets pushed back to 7, in which case the edge remains as it was, right? And X, which was sitting in 7, gets pushed to 8, and this edge now comes in here, right? X now moves to X into 8, and whatever was there in 8 gets pushed to 9. So 9 is now occupied, and this edge becomes reversed, right? So this is when you are adding X such that the connected component has at least has one cycle, right? In which case you might end up visiting the same bin more than once, right? But never more than 2 times. You will visit it at most 2 times, but it is possible that you will visit it more than once. Right? So these are the ways in which the adding an element into this hash table will look like. Right? So what you want to say is that as long as the connected component in the cuckoo graph is a tree or has at most has one cycle, then you will be able to enter that element into the hash table. Otherwise, you cannot. And this is what we are trying to see. So there are 2 questions now. One is, what is the size of the connected component? And the other is, what is the probability that there are no there is at most one cycle. There is at most one cycle per connected component. Right? We want to say that the expected size of the connected component is order 1, right? And also that the probability that there is at most one cycle or connected component is high, is large, right? At most one cycle per connected component, maybe, right? Per connected component is large, right? Any questions regarding the setup? Right. So we are studying the hash table, but we are moving to this graph corresponding to this hash table, and we are going to understand the properties of this graph now. Is anything unclear? Is there anything that you want me to repeat or clarify? Okay. So then let's try to understand this graph. Okay, let's try to understand this graph better. So how do you actually get hold of this graph, right? So how is this graph? So this graph is now a random graph. So the cuckoo graph is a random graph because of the choice of H1 and H2. Right? How is this graph generated? How is this random graph generated? Right? We need to study this random graph now, right? And how is this random graph generated? You're choosing H1 and one of so instead of talking about H1 and H2 for now, we are going to talk about a graph with n vertices and m edges that is going to be generated randomly, right? So can you tell me how the graph is going to be generated, right? Forget about how H1 and H2 is. I want to generate a random graph on n vertices with m edges that is going to capture this the hash table that was created using H1 and H2, right? So how do I model that? So how does the graph, how do you select the graph? Right. Is my question clear? Is it right? Let's forget, if you forget about H1 and H2 for now and you want to construct this random graph, how is this random graph constructed? Each edge is present with some probability. Is that how it is? So what Sarthak is saying is one sort of random graph, right? Where each edge you put in with probability, some probability P. Is that how this random graph is generated? Is that the way in this random graph is generated, or is it some other way? So it's not that you're going to take each edge and independently put an edge there, right? That's not what is going to happen. So how is this graph generated? We will use that such a random graph in the analysis, but this random graph currently is not being generated that way. So how is it generated?
Maybe like select two vertices independently uniformly at random and then connect those two vertices to form an edge.
Okay. Okay. So what you do is, what Raghu is saying is what is happening, right? So you repeat the following m times. Okay. So repeat the following m times. Choose u and v uniformly at random from 1 to n and connect uv. Right. See, recall that an edge is the element that you're going to enter into the hash table, and the vertices are the possible entries, right? So you choose an edge, then there are two possibilities where you can put it corresponding to h1x and h2x, right? So those, since h1 and h2 are truly random functions, you choose two vertices uniformly at random from 1 to n, and then you decide to connect that edge corresponding to this for corresponding to that element, right? So this graph, so we will call this graph, this model, this graph as GNM. Okay. So this is a random graph with n vertices and m edges, right? So now what you can actually show is this following statement. Okay. Let G be a graph obtained from G n comma m, where m is something like 1 minus epsilon n divided by 2. Okay. And epsilon is a constant greater than 0. Then the expected size of any connected component is order 1. Okay. So what this is saying is that size of the table is greater than 2 times the number of elements, right? And the using H1 and H2 is like generating a graph G from this distribution G and M, right? And what you want to say is that the expected size of a connected component is order 1. Right? This would say that the search time is order 1, provided okay. So this would say that the search time is order 1, provided the graph does not contain 2 cycles and 2 cycles in a connected component with 2 cycles. Right? Modulo that, this will tell you that the search will take order 1. Right? Any questions so far regarding the model and how we have converted the question about the cuckoo hashing to this question about these random graphs? Okay. So the first thing that we will see is that working with these random graphs are not very easy. It's not that they're not very easy, but they are a little more complicated than. So what can you say? What can happen? Why these might be slightly more complicated to work with than, So consider the following model, right? So consider, instead of this, suppose you had the. So let me just write a different theorem. I'll call it theorem prime. Okay. So let G be a graph obtained from G n comma p. I'll define what this is. For a suitable value of p less than 1. Okay. Then the expected size of a connected component in G is order 1. Okay. And what is G and P? This is what is known as an Erdős-Renyi graph. Okay. What does this do? So this is a graph on n vertices, and you construct this graph as follows, right? For every pair u comma v, right? For every pair of vertices u comma v, put the edge uv in E with probability p, right? So here what you do is you take n vertices, and for every pair of vertices what you do is you will choose to put that edge with probability p independent of any other pair. right? So, do you understand the difference between GNP and GNM, the way that we have written? Why would you why would you feel that GNP might be easier to work with than GNM? Can you see similarity between these two distributions with something that we have already seen in this course? Yeah, so GNP, we are not fixing the number of edges, right? We are not fixing the number of edges, but rather we are saying that you're putting an edge with probability P, right? So do you see similarities with something that we have seen before in this course? The Poisson distribution balls and bins, right? So if you notice, this GNP is something like the Poisson distribution. You're saying that every edge is going to be present with probability P independent of the other edges. Whereas GNM, you're saying something like um, the number of edges is fixed, and then you are putting that each edge is put randomly between two vertices, right? So this is more like the GNM is more like the balls and bins, and GNP is like the Poisson version of it, right? And we saw that even in the case of balls and bins, it's easier to analyze when there is independence involved, which is why we are going to analyze GNP, right, instead of GNM. Okay. So what we are going to do is we are going to choose P in such a way that the expected number of edges, right? So what is the expected number of edges in G, right? So if G is sampled according to say G and P, what is the expected size of the edge set of G? What is this?
N square P.
Yeah, N square P. Yeah. So let's assume for now that we will work with instead of multigraph. So you say N square P is correct. Let's assume for now that we are working with graph without loops. So it doesn't matter. So let's say it's N square P. Yeah. So now what do you want? So if you want to compare these two distributions, right, GNM and GNP, what do you want to put the value of P? What will be a nice value of P? What do you want? Right. So what you want to do is you want to approximate this theorem, right? You want to prove this theorem that is written there, whereas you're going to try and prove theorem prime, right? And then you want to say that proving theorem prime is sufficient to prove theorem, imply theorem, right? So what will be the sort of value that you want to put for P? Yeah, so you want to make sure that this expectation is like the number of edges, right? So that finally so that when you actually with high probability it is actually going to be concentrated around that expectation and so on, right? So you will choose P in such a way that the expected number of edges that you will see in this graph generated by G and P is actually like G and M. Okay. And so this approximation is good enough. So just like in the case of Poisson approximation, we can make a similar statement about these graphs as well. Okay. So what can you say? So this is one statement that we'll just write down, maybe not prove right now. Okay. So this is a lemma. Yeah. Right. So so let for any monotone increasing graph property, sorry. Okay. Let so what is a monotone increasing graph property? Okay, let me just say. So what is a monotone increasing graph property? So this is a property where if you add more edges, the graph continues to have the property. right? So it's monotone, so it doesn't matter. So if you keep adding edges, then the property remains. So if you take any monotone increasing graph property, right, and let p n capital N be the probability that the property holds for G sampled from G n capital N, right? Okay, and let p n comma p, okay, the probability that the property holds for G sampled according to the Erdős-Renyi model. Okay. So now what we want to say is that by choosing P in a suitable way, the probability P n comma capital N and P n comma small p, they are actually very close to each other. Okay. So if you let P plus equal to 1 plus epsilon, I'm sorry, there's some issues with the, okay. 1 plus epsilon n divided by n choose 2. Okay, let's assume that these are just graphs instead of multi-graphs now, right? So when if you p plus is this and p minus is 1 minus epsilon n divided by n choose 2, right? So the choice of this is mainly so that the expected number of edges is actually close to capital N, right? So if this happens for right, then the probability that the graph sampled according to p minus p and p minus, right, and the probability that we have the graph n's with sampled according to g n capital N, right, having the property p, these are related in this very nice way. So this is at this minus e to the minus o of n, okay, and this is at most p n p plus e to the minus o of n. Okay. So this is very similar to what we saw for the Poisson approximation for balls and bins, right? So there we said that this is the quantity that we really want to study, right? Whereas it's easier for me to study these quantities, right? It's easier for me to, what I want is p n comma capital N, whereas it's easier for me to study p n comma p minus. And this lemma is saying that that is sufficient. If you can prove it for p n comma p minus or n comma p plus, that is sufficient to bound p n comma capital, right? Just like in the case of balls and bins and the Poisson approximation, right? So we'll not see a proof of this right now. Okay, let's take this for granted now. Right? Any questions on this? Is the statement clear? So just a minute. Can you just hold on? I'll just be back. Just a minute. Yeah. Sorry, someone just came. Yeah. Okay. So any questions regarding the statement of this theorem? All right. So now, what we can do is we are going to analyze this algorithm. So we are going to bound the constant to the fact that the connected component size is going to be going to be a constant, by assuming that the graph indeed comes as is an Erdos-Renyi graph instead of a graph generated from this other, the actual graph, right? This is the actual graph that is going to come up, right? The cuckoo graph is going to look like GNM, whereas we are going to analyze, instead of analyzing that directly, we will analyze the graph as though it is generated by from an Erdos-Renyi random process. So I think I'm out of time. Actually, the analysis requires some more time. So we will stop here, right? And do the bound on the cuckoo hashing in the next lecture on Monday, right? Any questions regarding whatever we discussed today? Is there anything that's unclear? Okay, so then I think we are done for now. So a couple of announcements that I want to make before you leave, right? So so then your midsem is scheduled for 23rd, which is a Thursday, right? So would it be okay if I give you a take-home exam for 16th and 17th or something? Are you guys okay with that? Are you guys free? Is there anyone with any constraints regarding those? So it will be a take-home exam, and you don't need to type up your answers. You just need to write them in a paper and scan. That is also you can type if you want, definitely, but if you want, you can also write and scan it, provided you write very legibly. Right. So it will probably be a one-day exam. It will not be very difficult or long. So I just want to know whether you are free on Thursday so that we can do this. Right. Is there anyone with any constraints for Thursday?